Considering the state of insecurity in Nigeria, with armed forces fighting on several fronts against armed criminals and terrorists, bandits, and issues of kidnapping, 230 suspected Boko Haram terrorists arrested in the heat of insurgency have been released and handed over to the Borno state government for proper integration into the society. Okay, these are people made up of 219 male and 11 female. After profiling them, sources within the military says the suspects were cleared after it was established that they are not terrorists but were conscripted against their will. This again brings to the fore the question and calls to dialogue and use a non-kinetic approach to negotiate with bandits for the purpose of wrestling them, rehabilitating and retaining them so they can add value to their own lives and for them to also contribute to nation building. It is, however, important that the government solve the menacing situation of insecurity to ensure that citizens have peace. We still have with us in the studio this morning Mr. Olufemi Lawson, who is Executive Director of Center for Public Accountability. And I would like to ask you this morning, Mr. Lawson.
Before you go ahead with the question, let's also welcome Chukwuma Okoro, who joins us virtually. Chukwuma Okoro is a journalist and also a public affairs commentator. Well, good to have you join us, Chukwuma.
Good morning, Moses.
All right, good morning.
Good morning, people in the studio.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, good to have you, Mr. Chukwuma. Okay, now to you, Mr. Lawson. Reintegrating 230 Boko Haram terrorists that, according to the military, they say they've actually done the normal profiling and found out that they were constrained against their own will to be Boko Haram suspect. What do you make of that?
Well, that is not strange. If you look at how Boko Haram has operated over the years, you come to agree that it's not impossible. There are a lot of people who have found themselves involved in the activities of Boko Haram against their will. You recall the number of abductions of school children in Yobe, in Adamawa, in Borno, most especially, all through the period that the activities were, so intense. So it's not impossible that some of these children who were kidnapped as school children, some of these communities that were invaded, where women and children were taken away, may have found themselves in the various camps of these terrorists and must have lived within those communities before they had been arrested by the military through the operation. Some of them willfully coming to surrender. We've seen a lot of instances where people who are considered as Boko Haram terrorists have come to surrender. So, like the case of the Chibok girl, you remember the number of Chibok girls who had to escape from the camp. Some of them were also married off by these terrorists. So it's not impossible that we have that number of people being reintegrated into the society, especially those who have been properly profiled and have been seen not to have been conscripted against their own will into being part of the Boko Haram. But most importantly, we must look beyond just bringing them out of their involvement over the years with these terrorists to properly, psychologically rehabilitating them, because in the course of their being, in the community of these terrorists, they must have learned all sort of acts, including acts of manning ammunitions, and arms and all sort of drugs and all other atrocities that these terrorists commit, all those on a daily basis. So beyond just, security profiling and intelligence analysis, we must do more as a society for a serious psychological rehabilitation of these people. Otherwise, we may be bringing people who have been trained by terrorists, reintegrating them into the society.
I'm glad you touched on that. I'm glad you touched on that, because I also know that we have Boko Haram sympathizers. Basically, we have sympathizers with those that sympathize with insurgents.
Yes.
We have a lot of them. Now, let me come to Chukwuma now. Chukwuma, once again, now, isn't it a bit suspicious that a few children, I'm even confused I'm confused as to the figure to give out. If I don't know if I should say 287 or 137, but anyway, 137 were released, all right, and right after that, a few days after, 230 Boko Haram suspects that have been cleared were also released to be reintegrated into the society. And this also happened after what one would call a successful meeting between Sheikh Gumi and the federal government. These events happening about the same time. Isn't it a bit suspicious? Some people have said, truly, maybe no ransom was paid, but probably there was some sort of a swap, all right, exchange of prisoners and kidnapped individuals. How do you react to this, Chukuma?
Yeah, good morning, Moses. Once again,
Good morning,
it's like you said, it's kind of suspicious, and if one begins to dot the lines and trace them, you see that it leads to certain conclusions. It leads to certain conclusions that it is most probable that yes, we are almost getting to the root of the cause of insecurity. One thing that bothers me is that the government is here to unpack a whole lot of things. Let's take it that insecurity is inside the bag. The government is here to unpack the bag to see the different colors of insecurity, and by so doing, try to get to the root cause of the problem. As I keep talking about root cause, like I told you, my background is in security, conflict and war studies, peace studies. If until you get to the root cause of this problem, you just be papering over it. And there is this recidivist tendency, the thing, we keep going back and forth, we keep going back and forth. So until you unpack that bag and see the different color of its insecurity, we will just be doing a circuit show around the whole thing of insecurity. I'm happy that the guest in the studio said something that is very, very profound. Sincerity. The sincerity of the government in fighting insecurity. Like you pointed out, if you connect the dots and trace them, you discover that, look, there is something the government is not telling us. How come these people, this 100 and we don't have the accurate figure now. Some people are saying, okay, double lists, 2 lists were submitted. That's why you have 187. And I don't know how double list will not filter the names accurately and now produce 187 instead of 137. But that's another story itself. So how come the people were just taken to a place the government said it was difficult for them to reach security agencies? How many days later, these people are released, and as they are released, they are seen in bespoke uniforms, sewn, they are taken care of, and the government is now telling us, when the parents say, we want to reunite with our families, with our children, the government says they are undergoing physiotherapy. That to me is reactive, and you don't solve this kind of problems by being reactive. What of those outside? Have you given them physiotherapy? And now let's go back to marking out a long-term approach to solving this problem. Let us take it for granted. Let us give it to the military that these people have been profiled appropriately. And it is discovered that yes, they are free, they are non-terrorists, some of them were forced against their will. Let us even leave the fact that they are trying to choose the narrative like it is not crime, it is poverty. Like it is not anger, it is rage. Somebody goes to steal, and instead of saying that he's a thief, you say, okay, it's poverty that led him to steal. Let us even take that for granted. Now, what have you done as a government, as an institution, to say these people aged between 15, 25 are already in the game. They're already in the mess. Now, what plans do we have in the interim to make sure that children born today will not be lured into the same insecurity because of poverty, because of radicalism, because of unemployment?
It's interesting that you have to tell that line.
So these things are short-termisms. We doesn't solve the problem. The government, okay, look at it now. Assuming these people have even killed Nigerians, is it required to say you have profiled them and discovered that they were forced against their will? Moses, if you force me against my will and give me a gun to go and kidnap, and in the process I kill somebody, and later come to repent to tell you that I was forced against my will, is it appropriate to say, oh, this young man was forced into kidnapping, and you just let the person go? So when we choose this narrative, we are doing a whole lot of bad to the society. So we'll be, like I said, let the government unpack the bag and sincerely look at it holistically. What can we do in the future? Because as it is now, if you take the narrative they are giving us, by next year we'll still have another set of people radicalized who went into the program, into kidnapping, into Boko, into terrorism, into banditry, because of poverty or because they were forced. Now, let us say, in the next 10 years, what do we do now to ensure that we don't have such people in the next 10 years?
Mr. Chukuma,
that should be our concern.
Talking about people joining that, some citizens of Nigeria are already making, that statement saying if the people who were Boko Haram bandits are being freed, then that shows they're also moving to it since people are now being granted freedom. But anyway, let me ask you this one. Now, what do you make of the fact that a sheikh, a person of Sheikh Gumi, is an intermediary between government of Nigeria and the bandits? And also he is of the opinion that we, our Nigerian government, need to negotiate with these bandits. Not only him, even a former Minister of Information, talking about Shitu Adebayo, also called for negotiation with the bandits. Do you think that actually is a good call?
I've always said it is not good. It is a government policy not to negotiate with terrorists. But we understand what happens behind. Even these people that they told us that they were released without ransom. Let us take government at the face value that yes, they were released without ransom. Right. But you and I know, intelligence community knows that it is difficult, except it is orchestrated to achieve a particular aim. Then it is not possible to release these people without ransom. So what happened to the kidnappers? When the abductors are arrested, or did they just say, okay, take these people, we are bringing them back? So there's that gap, there's that mismatch between what they are telling us and what actually happened. Back in 2012, I wrote an article and I said, the government on its own, after more than 50 years of serial neglect, criminalized the youth of the Niger Delta by abandoning their environment, by despoiling their environment, by not giving them back their due. And when these guys went up in arms against the government turned around to give them amnesty. I condemned it. And I said, look, this thing you are doing is just going to grow another set of militants in the near future because you are not looking at the root cause of the problem.
All right. Okay. Now let's
down the line.
Okay.
That is what we are seeing now. That is why somebody like Gumi can say, "Oh, these bandits, you need to negotiate with them."
All right. So we're coming to that one now.
Negotiate with criminals. How many armed robbers has government negotiated with?
Oh well. Let's hold that thought now. Let's come to Olufemi now. Negotiating with bandits and reintegration into the society. Question is, for one who has tasted power, who has tasted authority, who has had people run and go on their knees in front of him, do you think it is easy to let go, to relinquish that sort of power in the name of being repentant? Is that something that, are we toiling with fire here?
The question is even that, what would they want? When we had the issue of the Niger Delta, just like Mr. Kuro said, it was purely an issue of economic injustice, yes, environmental pollution. There were issues on the table. They didn't just take up arms. In actual fact, expatriates were abducted then to seek government attention and all sort of tactics. When Boko Haram came with an ideology, which it openly professed till date. that it is against Western education. Children must not go to school in those parts of the country, invade school, invade religious places, either mosque or church, wherever education is taught. But for these terrorists, who we continue to call bandits, particularly in the Northwest, what do they want? At no time till date, except I don't know, have they come out specifically to say this is why we are taking up arms against the government? We've seen interviews, we've seen a lot of them being interviewed by some media. I realize that these are just purely people who were empowered, possibly somewhere by some group of people, to destabilize the country, because they claim they were cattle herders at some point, then they became cattle rustlers. The same people who claimed they were cattle herders became cattle rustlers, killing people, killing farmers, killing herdsmen. So what do these people that you are asking the states to negotiate with, what do they want? Are they fighting also against Western education? Are their resources, is there economic injustice against their people? Remember that some of these characters are not even Nigerians. They are invading terrorists from other parts, of the West Africa.
Some are saying they are. Some are saying that they are Nigerians actually.
No, not all of them.
Gumi has come out to say that they are Nigerians.
Not all of them
so
are.
Should be treated.
And why can't Sheikh Gumi tell the Nigerian people or the government what this guy? If you're just talking about negotiation, there must be a basis for negotiation. What do they want?
Okay, let me tell you. One of the things that he said they want is that they feel that their families, wives and children were killed in the area bombardment, and so out of anger, they are kidnapping people and also attacking the villages around them. Does that seem justified?
Their families were killed in area bombardment against who? Against these terrorists. They use their family as shield. They use other people's children as shield while perpetrating their crime. The military didn't just invade communities, to bombard them, even though there are some unfortunate circumstances by the military. But the truth is that if anybody has been killed in the course of military operations, there are people who these terrorists are using as shield.
Right.
While perpetrating their crime. So is that enough for the country to sit down and negotiate with every group that take up arms against the state?
Okay, now let's also bring this to another perspective. Now, the military has come out to say that they have done a proper profiling of these guys, that they are releasing to be reintegrated into the society again. Is there the possibility that the military is not doing enough intelligence or having enough intelligence to gather and end this terrorism and banditry in Nigeria from this same set of persons that they are releasing? That's one. Two, is there also the possibility that a Sheikh Gumi, who we know his former spokesperson in the person of Mamu, was also in that list of the financiers of terror? Is there the possibility that he's also aware that there are a lot of Nigerians? Of course, he's also said that the military knows where these guys are. Is there the possibility that there is also no willpower, no political willpower to end this whole situation?
Well, the government have often presented an image of an institution that is ready to end banditry. Over the years, we've invested so much in national security. If you look at the annual budget for defense, every year it keeps rising, even though we are not really making significant progress because the activities of these groups keep festering along, every part of the country. But I think the war, just like she said initially, we must begin to look at a non-kinetic approach to this war, because it looks so much like the more armored tanks, the more guns and helicopters that we buy, the more number of terrorists that are emerging across our space as a country. So I think we must now begin to look at how to invest more in the war of intelligence than just relying on our firepower by the military. It looks so much like we are not doing much rather in the area of intelligence in the war against these guys. Like while we're doing the newspaper review, the terrorist group responsible for the abduction of the Kuriga school children had their leader's name mentioned.
Yeah.
It means these are not ghosts. These are
Yeah,
people who
individuals.
visit the market. These are people who visit the fuel stations. These are people who sometimes have been given chieftaincy title. That's why it happened in this country. So,
True that.
we cannot continue to believe that it is only by gun that we can win this war. I think there must be a different approach, either to win them, get them out of this bad business, or actually eliminate their operation.
Okay,
Alright.
talking about different approach, I would like to ask Mr. Chikuma this one. When Mr. Shitu or former Minister Shitu were talking, he made mention that reformed bandits can contribute, to nations building.
You're chuckling.
Yeah.
Anyway, you respond to that.
That's a quick
You also get to that too. So now, do you actually see the possibility of this happening? Because like Mr. Olufemi said, we need to do or approach this issue of banditry or insecurity in a different way.
Yes, even prisoners too. Even prisoners contribute to the economy in one way or the other. Because there are people who supply foods to them. Some of them learn skills inside the prison. Some of them go to school. Some of them go to school while in prison. So all those things contribute to the national economy. But I think Mr. Shitu is being smart by half. See, look, I sincerely believe that people in government, we have a very intelligent people in government, but there's a systemic failure. When people get into government, there's something in the system that seems to turn them around from what they are supposed to be. Most of these things we are discussing here, these things we discuss on television, people in government know the truth. But I don't know why it's difficult for them to implement it. I don't know why. Like Mr. Lawson said, and I've said it too, fighting insecurity goes beyond guns and ammunition. It goes beyond buying Tucano jets, giving money to the military. No, it goes beyond that. It's all about people. And again, I go back to the issue of the root cause. What is the root cause? Unemployment, radicalism, criminality, or whatever. So when people like Shitu come to say that, look, these people contribute to the national economy. I mean, these are criminals. Criminals contributing to the national economy. In what way? He's just trying to feather a net that is difficult for me to understand. We have unemployed youths roaming the streets. The government hasn't done anything to take them out of the streets and put them into the mainstream of the economy. And now what they are trying to do is to tell the government to go ahead and now rehabilitate and reintegrate non-criminals who have been profiled.
But you do know that, I beg to interrupt you here. You do know that during the issue of the Niger Delta, the militants in the Niger Delta, they were trained. Some of them were sent abroad, trained on how to handle some of these pipelines and other things. So they were trained to be employed. But for the issue of bandits, what sort of training are we looking at giving them that will make them useful to the society?
Maybe the minister should be able to answer that question. It's his call to answer the question. Because I don't know how you can start training somebody who doesn't have basic education.
Okay, well.
And it's still the fault of the government. That we up till today we have about how many million children out of school and the government does nothing about it. And in the next 50 years you are asking us to use our government to train the same people that you failed to train because they are causing problems to society now. Okay. Does it make sense to you? Does it make sense to anybody?
Right. Okay,
does it show us as intelligent people?
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Let's come to Olufemi now. You did chuckle when you heard that reintegration into the society and then contributed to the society. What are your thoughts, really?
No, because I was actually, just like you said, I was actually trying to imagine the kind of value they would eventually be coming to add to the society, especially when we have not been able to know the basis of their so-called agitation. If it's people who are interested in the environment, are they interested in their natural resources? What is the basis of this agitation, so to put it, that we may consider as as a prospect for us as a society. We are integrating them. Are we going to look at the situation whereby we end up pushing them into our army again, or the police, and begin to have all these kind of negative characters who have dominated our security agencies today? Because when some of these politicians like Shitu make recommendations, if you probe them further, the next thing you ask or you suggest is that they are integrated into the army or the police.
Which is
Not
which
because
which
it's
is something that has been done before.
Yeah, so we must be very careful with this kind of advice coming from politicians, especially when
Still staying with that advice, do you see the possibility of some other parts of the country, youth precisely, who are at this point also not having anything to do, unemployed, also picking up arms, believing that in the end, when I'm being caught, I will be reintegrated into society? Do you see the possibility of a very dark future?
very, very dark one, for as long as we continue to negotiate, with people who ordinarily should be dealt with, by the law. As long as we continue to pamper people who, out of doing nothing, have constituted themselves into small governments within the government of the country, and a lot of them, you must also agree with me, that are aided by the political class. During elections, you find that these guys are not actually idle.
Right.
They become very, very useful. In fact, they are hardly found on the street because they are busy with one campaign or the other. They are useful tools in most cases for politicians. And when elections are over and they are abandoned, all those guns bought for them to terrorize political opponents stays with them. So, and they become idle, they cannot, and they have to service their lifestyle that they have been exposed to by politicians.
Now, this brings me to another question now. With the rise, because there has been a rise in kidnapping, banditry in the country now within this first less than 10 months or 11 months of this government, are you of the opinion that certain individuals within the political class are trying to make this government, this administration, this country difficult for this administration to run?
No, I don't think so. It's an inherited problem. It's whatever is happening now, we lived with it for about 8 years under Buhari. It stopped a lot of us from even being able to travel between a short distance as short as Ibadan from Lagos. And of course, kidnapping has continued. In most part of the country today, you can hardly travel by road. So it's an inherited problem. Okay. And I don't think it is majorly an issue of.
But you do know that northern elites are already calling for they're asking that this government cannot handle insecurity, cannot handle the security of the nation, and this government should be basically phased out.
Of course, it's just an opinion of a very greedy few who think it's their entitlement to be in power at all times, and the moment they are on holiday, from the villa or anywhere around the corridors of government, they become activists, they become agitators, and that's why we are beginning to see a lot of them in 8 years that Buhari was president in Nigeria. Their voices were muted, even when their own people
have been affected.
I travel a lot. I've been to virtually all the states in Nigeria, and I can tell you that even under a northern presidency, the 8 years of Buhari, one of the most affected, some of the most affected parts of the country in terms of insecurity, poverty, was that same part where the president came from. Because when you get to the north and you see how difficult it is for people to go to the farm, we did a tour from Lagos to Calabar through Benue back to some past states of the north before traveling down south during the administration of Buhari. Towards the end of that administration, and we came to it was a research with some American organization, and we realized that over 4,200 farm not farms, I mean farm settlement. A settlement can have like 100 farmers, some have 200, 300. Over 4,200 were already shut down, and they were majorly in the north. Because farmers could no longer go to the farm, they were being kidnapped, their farmlands were being destroyed and the like. So even their own people have been victims. So it is not now that they should begin to think this president cannot handle the situation. We have had a president who is from that region where they think they are political experts, they are experts in governance. What did they achieve?
All right then. Chukuma, as we make to conclude this, What's your thoughts on one of the headlines that we read today, where government is saying that sports betting and the likes are used
Crowdfunding.
to finance terrorism in Nigeria? Well, that particular one was for IPOB, financing terrorism within IPOB, sports betting, and the BDCs have been accused. Binance is also being accused of financing terrorism. Your thoughts on this, Chukuma?
Well, Moses, my thought is very simple. I think late last week or early this week, the government released a list of 14 people.
Yeah.
That they said they were financing terrorism. So, 6 individuals and 9 BDCs. If government has done that, we expect the government to go ahead and release the list of sport betting companies and individuals that are using it to finance terrorism, and at what level. And if government is able to do that, they shouldn't stop. They should go beyond that, prosecute these people. If they are found guilty, I mean, they should face the long arms of the law. It's as simple as that. We don't need that information. What we need is, hey, insecurity is off our table in this country. That is all we need. But believe me, the insecurity we have in this country is political insecurity. Is like if you permit me, I would disagree a little bit with Mr. Lawson in the studio, because if you discover like 3, 4, 5 months before elections and after elections, and after the swearing in, insecurity had slowed down. It has reduced to a certain level, and we began to wonder, does it mean that the mastermind of this insecurity were part of the political process that they said, let's leave this thing for now and do our politics first and then come back to it? Because that's exactly what happened. And you can see the spike in it, the spike in insecurity. They are living in the hinterland. People are locked up in their houses in Abuja and taken, and abducted for ransom. Abuja is no longer the safe haven it used to be. So if you begin to dot the lines, you discover that, and from what the current president is doing, in all honesty, if he has taken 40, 50, 100 positions from the north, in terms of replace the chairman of this, replace the director of this, the whole thing has gone down to the southwest. And people from the north are complaining. And the moment they complain, you see a spike in this insecurity. So it's not very difficult to link it with political realism. If you look at what happened to the Chibok girls, it's difficult for someone to convince me that the Chibok kidnap was not politically orchestrated. It is difficult to convince me and a lot of Nigerians. And that is what we see happening now. So it's a little bit of, to say that the insecurity is, yes, Buhari was in the north. Buhari from the north was there for 8 years, and I don't know why he was unable to fight insecurity. And when Jonathan was there, when Ihejirika unleashed the full arm, the full rod of the military, what happened? Your people are killing my people. People wanted to go to ICC, and they put pressure on Jonathan, and he removed Ihejirika. The moment he removed the Hejurika, what happened? Boko Haram festered. It became open source. You saw a lot of other, the splinter and a lot of other arms, a lot of other groups started coming in. And that is what is happening up till today.
All right, then, Chukwumokoro, we will have to anchor this conversation at this point. We've overstretched it beyond the time allocated. We'll anchor at this point and then go into the second topic. Now, when we come back, we'll be looking at Africa's democracy and the electoral process. All right, focus on what happened in Senegal. All right, we'll be talking about this when we come back. Stay with us.